Hey, it's Leo. Welcome to my channel. This week we're going to do a TBR progress review as well as slip in a sneaky swap of one of the books from my prompts for my April TBR. And I also wanted to wish you all a happy Earth Day. So thanks for being here and let's talk about some books. Each week on my channel, I lift up a different nonprofit and talk about their mission, and I will make a donation to that nonprofit. I would encourage you to like or follow or donate or check it out however you are inspired or able to do. This week, our nonprofit I feel like is a great one for Earth Day, and it is the Black Futures Farm. And you can find them at blackfutures.farm, and I'll link them down below with many other links about them as well. Black Futures Farm is a community-based organization bringing food to Black families in the area. Their aim is to implement the best methods of growing food, taking the best of what they can from ancestral practices while also being a part of innovation. There is a great blog post about the Black Futures Farm on the People's Co-op site. I highly recommend you check it out. And I'm also going to provide the links for following or donating to the Black Futures Farm. Thank you. Okay, on to the books. This week I completed 3 books on my April TBR. The first one was for prompt 5, which was the next in a series. And for this prompt, I read The Whispering Skull, which is book 2 in the Lockwood & Co. series by Jonathan Stroud. This series is set in a alternative London in which there's a thing called the problem that started about 50 or 60 years ago, where ghosts started coming and walking around, particularly after dark. And if you get touched by a ghost, you will die. The problem is adults cannot see the ghosts, only children, teenagers can. And so these children and teenagers are employed in a variety of ways to either watch for the ghosts or in certain cases to hunt down and find the source of the haunting and contain or destroy that in order to make places safe again. So in this series, we are following Anthony Lockwood, a teen who has started his own agency rather than having an adult supervisor. And he has hired 2 other teenagers, George and Lucy, and the 3 of them go out and go on these adventures, solving the cases of different hauntings and so forth. I really enjoyed book 1, and so for this prompt next in a series, I was definitely going to read book 2 of The Whispering Skull. So in this book, there is a new client, Mr. Saunders, who he's an excavator. Because of this problem with the ghosts coming back, there are places like cemeteries that used to be safe that aren't any longer. So there are excavation companies that are going in and taking the bodies, the bones from the graves, and they're going to move them and destroy them or make them safe in somehow so that people living near cemeteries are not going to be in jeopardy. So Mr. Saunders hires Lockwood & Co. to come and be present at the excavation of this grave that they think is going to be pretty spooky, scary. And that's of Edmund Bickerstaff. He's a Victorian doctor who was doing all of these things to try to talk to the dead and figure out what was beyond and a lot of stuff. And well, it turns out it was a spooky, scary grave to excavate. And so some mishaps happen. There's the draw of a mysterious relic. There's some rivalry between Lockwood & Co. and a rival group of agents that are also working this case to try to track down this dangerous relic that has gone missing. Also in the house, there's the skull of the title, that keeps talking, but only Lucy can hear it, and is kind of taunting her and leading her, drawing out hints, and it's an intriguing mystery in and of itself of who is the skull, why is it involved in this case, what's the outcome. Um, and I also really enjoyed this book because we got to meet a lot more of the characters of this alternative London. And so we see some different sets in terms of one of the agencies and the kind of the ritzier side of things. We see a little bit of the underworld side of things, and the characters are just fun and interesting. And then there's kind of tension that builds between Anthony and George and Lucy, which I think is done really well. So I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the adventure and the ghost hunt and the seeking of the artifact and the all of the secrets that they needed to unearth, the discord and the rivalry. All of that was very well done. I felt this was a fun and satisfying story, and with good mysteries, good resolution. I liked the story arc. And there was also like a small tease of a cliffhanger at the end of the story that pulls you then into wanting to read book 3, which definitely is now on my TBR. So that's The Whispering Skull, book 2 in the Lockwood & Co. series by Jonathan Stroud, and I definitely recommend that for you all. The next book I finished in this last week was on my TBR from March, and so it was a carryover and didn't meet any of the prompts. I just didn't get a chance to finish it in March, but oh my gosh, this is a 5-star read. So this is The Fire This Time, A Next Generation Speaks About Race, edited by Jesmyn Ward. This is a series, it's a book of essays and poems about race in America, and it's divided into 3 sections on legacy, reckoning, and jubilee. And there's so many. I could probably make a whole video talking about each one. There's a really great variety of perspectives and stories and personal insights from really good writers. Just really highly recommend it. It's just so good. Because they're small essays, you could easily also take it in small chunks and then finish it as you can, because there's also a lot to think about. So there's a few of my favorites. One of them is The Dear Pledges of Our Love, A Defense of Phyllis Wheatley's Husband by Honorée Fanon Jeffers. In that essay, we learn about Phyllis Wheatley, who's an 18th century poet. She's the first Black author of a published book of poetry. She was stolen from West Africa when she was 7 and enslaved by the Wheatley family in Boston. Honorée Jeffers describes learning about Wheatley in grade school during Black History Month and just a partial history, and not until college learns more of her story, including her husband. And when the story is told about Phyllis Wheatley's husband, there's just a lot of negative stereotypes about Black men that accompany the way his life is told and his influence on Phyllis. So this essay explores Honorée Jeffers diving in through an academic and personal journey to learn more both about Phyllis Wheatley and her husband. And along the way, she discovers that the primary biographer is related to the family that enslaved her. And so this voice is really a questionable authority, right, on the life of this woman and on the character of both her and of her husband. And so the author really dives in to examine the stereotypes and myths that were built up around this genius poet. So that was incredible. There are also really powerful essays like Black and Blue by Garnett Cadogan, in which he describes his experiences walking through the town at night or sometimes in the daytime, in Jamaica, in New Orleans, and New York, and the freedom that he found in some spaces, particularly growing up in Jamaica, and then the ways in which he was constrained and was no longer able to enjoy that freedom of walking when he was living in places in the US out of the violence and of police brutality. So that was really powerful. And then I also, I loved so many of the essays in this. Some of the ones at the end that were really powerful as well. This Far, Notes on Love and Revolution by Daniel Jose Older, and Message to My Daughters by Edwidge Dandekot. So highly recommend that you check this out and give it a try. For my second prompt, I had chosen The Survivors by Jane Harper. The prompt was for a book set in Australia. And I started this book, got about partway through the first chapter, and I don't know why, I stopped reading, and I actually Googled for spoilers. And then I decided to not finish it and to pick up a different book. And I'm not going to say that you won't love The Survivors. On a different day, it might be my cup of tea. It just wasn't hitting me in that moment. I've been trying to think about why I chose to DNF it. Maybe it didn't strike my mood. I think also there was just, I don't want to say that it was super suspenseful in the beginning, but maybe there was. There's a prologue that describes, this something that happened, and you don't know who the speaker is, and you actually don't know what happened, but there's just a sense of violence probably that played out, and we know that there is like a mistake and a tragedy and so forth that happened in the past. Maybe it was just too much tension that I could take that day. So anyway, I chose to DNF The Survivors, but check it out. Maybe it'll be just your cup of tea. So instead of reading The Survivors, I wound up reading a book that's not set in Australia at all, so it doesn't really meet the prompt, but I'm just gonna do a sneaky swap and make it work. So instead, I found The Stranger Diaries by Elly Griffiths, which is book 1 in the Harbinder Kaur series. So The Stranger Diaries is a murder mystery set in Sussex, England, where an English teacher is murdered, and her friend and colleague Claire also then starts finding these menacing notes in her diary related to the murder, possibly. The high school itself is set there's a new building in the old building, and the old building is this old house that the Gothic Victorian writer R.M. Holland lived, and his wife mysteriously died, and maybe there's a daughter who went missing, and he wrote this Gothic horror short story called The Stranger. And so as the English teachers in the school, they teach the book The Stranger, or they teach the story, and it becomes interwoven where parts of the story of this Gothic short story are told in different sections of the book. So it kind of becomes a fun like book within a book concept, where this Gothic novel is told within the framing of the larger murder mystery in present day. So I think this Stranger Diaries was pretty good. I'd probably give it like 3.5 stars. Still working on my rating system, so that might change. But I liked the tone and the pacing. I started it out and it kind of sucked me right in, so that was good, especially since I just not finished a different story. It was interesting because there were multiple points of view told in the story. We heard from Claire and her daughter, and also Harbinder Kaur, the detective sergeant. And then we also read from both Claire's diary and Georgia's diary, as well as then the short story from R.M. Holland that was interspersed in between them all. And I think the switching back and forth between points of view went really well. The one thing I would say that I didn't like is that I felt like it made it repetitive. If the mother described a scene and then the daughter described the same scene from her perspective, there was a little bit of like, well, we already heard that you said that, and that's how I felt. But it wasn't too obnoxious. It was, I noticed it, but I was able to get past it, and it felt like it happened more at the beginning and less as the story went on. Or maybe I was just engaged enough in the story that it didn't that I wasn't bothered by that or nitpicking. So I didn't guess the murderer or the motive, although I'd kind of, once it was revealed, I realized I'd considered that as a possibility, but not seriously dwelt on it. So I was surprised and I was misled, and so that was pleasant. But it also didn't feel like it came out of left field where like, aha, we suddenly have this DNA test from a whatever, like some of the TV shows we watch. One thing that I found interesting is that when the book first started, and even the way you read the kind of the blurb, it feels like it's going to be a series or a story about Claire, the English teacher. And it is, I mean, like, she's integral in the story, and we have her POV and so forth. But the series is actually for the Detective Sergeant Harbinder Kaur, and so that was just an interesting way to do things. I'm not sure. I'll see how it unfolds. When we first meet Harbinder Kaur, I didn't really know if I liked her, but then I actually really enjoyed, or we got to know her better. She warmed up a little, like I warmed up to her. I don't know. It was a really nice way of getting pulled into really rooting for a character. So I really valued that, or I really admired that. I also liked that there was some diversity in the story. Harbinder Kaur is a lesbian Sikh who is 35 and lives at home with her parents. They don't know she's gay, but it felt like that was handled very well, and it wasn't othered. I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes. I know that at least there's another book in the Harbinder Kaur series, so I'm excited to see like what happens to her journey. Lots of questions. Will she meet someone? Will she come out to her parents? Will she move out of her house? Will she, develop deeper friendships in the town, so forth. So I guess maybe I should give it 4 stars because I have all of these questions about this character, and I really enjoyed meeting her and getting to know her, and I want to know her better. So, what more can you want from a story, I guess? So I think for a good mystery read, I would recommend The Stranger Diaries by Elly Griffiths, and I hope you enjoy it. So let me know in the comments, did you read it? Did you like this story? How did you feel about the multiple points of view and the ending, or that this is Harbinder's series and not Claire's? Tell me all your thoughts. I also started the book that I'm reading for Prompt 9, which was for a nonfiction, The Bush Still Burns by Terry Allen Moe. And this is a book that I am just savoring. It feels like it's going to be a really important book in my journey. It's talking about spirituality and community organizing and how those come together, and that feels really relevant to my own life. I really appreciate that there are reflection questions at the end of each chapter, so I'm probably not going to rush through this one. I'm going to savor it. One thing that I did enjoy is that it's talking in part about the history of Portland and the history of Black Portland. And in one of the early scenes, there's a household book reading discussion of The Warmth of Other Suns, which if you saw my video last week, I just finished. So that I was like, hey, I've read that. I know what they're talking about. So that felt like a nice bit of synchronicity. So I recommend this to you if spirituality and community organizing are things that you may be interested in. I think this would be a good book for you to read. Again, I'm still working my way through it because I want to savor it, but definitely enjoying it. So the cliffhanger for this video is whether I'll finish my April TBR. I still have 4 books left. I have to finish The Bush Still Burns. I also have Evil Dead Center by LaFavor. I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek, Shraya, and Our Lives Matter, A Womanist Queer Theology by Pamela R. Lightsey. I hope that I can get through these. These are all look to be really great books, and so I can't wait to finish them and share them with you. And I've also started plotting for my May TBR. So have you started looking ahead to May? It's really right around the corner, and so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you soon as well. So with that, I will sign off and also remind you about the Black Futures Farm, and say thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe and comment below, and see you next time. See you in the comments. Blessing to you and yours, and happy Earth Day.